Energy Opportunities' global journey towards a clean energy future continued in India, where the debate turned to making sure future energy supplies are secure.
India's energy appetite is insatiable. Every year, the predictions are for a chronic deficit in the supply of energy. Last year's blackouts were a tragedy for India, not just in terms of businesses not being able to operate, but the actual human health risk that occurs when people suddenly don't have access to electricity. Nearly a quarter of all Indians still don't have access to basic forms of electricity. And that means, for example, a child not being able to do his homework at night. There is a lot of concern amongst investors that the rules in the energy market of India simply aren't fair, aren't transparent, and don't give enough stability for the kind of multi-billion-dollar investment that needs to be made to unlock new sources of energy, like natural gas, like solar, and like wind energy.
The demand for energy is going to grow, but clearly there are implications not only for emissions of greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide, but also in terms of local environmental problems. We are not talking about energy choices that are linked only with environmental considerations, but energy choices that, really speaking, would have major economic implications for this country.
Electricity to me is almost an aspirational requirement for growth as well as the quality of life. For the present, it seems that the thorium route for nuclear energy is I think the only way presently available to us to have sustained energy security for the country.
The blackouts were a turning point, I believe, in seeing that India's system must change. Certainly there is a huge interest in India to create some sense of self-sufficiency for energy. There are large reserves of coal that have been for a long time explored, and now there's this new opportunity for gas. But in the near term, imports are going to have to play a major role. In wind energy, India has had some tremendous success. My belief is that that's because the government started with a fresh sheet of paper. They were able to design a set of rules for investment that were clear and more transparent. The next big question, though, is solar. India has had a focus on requiring solar energy to be done by Indian manufacturers, and that has so far really held back the expansion of the solar industry. And these are the things that the politicians in India must address if it wants both foreign investors and domestic investors to take up the challenge of meeting the outrageous and insatiable demand for energy in India today.
We travel to New Delhi to ask top thinkers how India could ensure energy security and improve its air quality by 2035. The winning idea was a combination of onshore and offshore renewable energy infrastructure, supported by market policies, alongside India becoming a world leader in thorium-based nuclear production.
The thorium-based nuclear production took me by surprise a little bit, I have to say, but I love the overall enthusiasm about renewable that they reflected in India. There was this sense that perhaps we can get to a tipping point where ultimately renewable sources of energy replace coal and oil. Some talk that maybe gas would be a transit fuel, but largely they were excited about the idea of trying to make solar and wind and tidal and other sources of renewable work. I'd like to ask Math Smith at Renewable UK to talk a little about this.
I think a big challenge for all countries looking at this is about how you develop at scale. In the UK, if you look at what we're doing, we have a lot of older generation which is needing to switch off. Either it's old or it has to accord with new environmental regulations. It can't do that cost effectively. So we have a replacement challenge, whichever way we choose to go. Countries need to look at what their resources are in terms of what suits, and also what their skills and technology expertise are. So in the UK, for example, there's a big push on offshore wind work as a new opportunity, but equally we're looking at nuclear now as a big opportunity. So in India, they're clearly looking at what works for them, the resource they've got, and trying to back different technologies to help provide that solution.
A lot of this whole exercise, I'm afraid, has been wishful thinking. The reality is India currently is building 550 coal-fired power stations. And they're doing that, and then forget about wind and solar. This will be completely insignificant in 2035. The IEA is absolutely adamant. The reality is that energy demand in India is going to treble. You mentioned millions, hundreds of millions of people moving into the middle class, into the cities with an urban lifestyle. Energy demand is going to treble. You can throw as much wind, solar, and tidal and what have you. It will be insignificant. The reality is what India needs, what China needs is clean, state-of-the-art, coal-fired power station that solve the pollution problem, because that's what they're suffering from. That's where the technology has to improve. What happens after 2035 is a different question, but up to that point, the energy mix won't change. In fact, the mix of the renewables, so says the International Energy Agency, will actually drop.
If you look at what is happening within Europe, say, the shift to renewables is very significant. And that is about countries saying, well, what is going to happen in the future and what we need in terms of the need to decarbonize. You portray it as if you can switch technologies on and off in terms of that shift, that you don't do anything one day and you do a lot the next day. This is a long-term challenge between now and 2050, and we need to therefore get on with moving to those technologies. Yes, of course, we need clean coal, carbon capture storage technologies, but you don't say, well, we'll just have that, we won't do anything else.
Somebody's got to speak in defense of thorium, which you were surprised by, and the Indians, in fact, have been really wise here, because what we want in 2035 is, as been said, clean energy that's always on. Thorium solves the problem of nuclear. There isn't the same waste problem. There isn't the same nuclear weapon proliferation problem. We've got the idea of building smaller reactors, lots of them, getting value for money in terms of mass production, so we could get the cost of nuclear down. I think it's a really smart idea.
The debate this evening has been entirely, as far as I can see, on grid.
I agree with the first speaker over there. I think there's a lot of Peter Pan thinking. And one of the things is the timescale of 2035 is 20 years away. Now, I'm a great believer in doing thorium research and things like this, but there's no way you're going to have a fleet of thorium reactors by then. It's just not possible. Equally, I was at a meeting just recently in London where we were asked, how much were you willing to pay for decarbonisation? And the answer was basically nothing. Right? So the idea that you're going to get loads of renewables, wind and solar, particularly in certain parts of the world, where they are already not got a massive amount of money to invest, is just, cloud cuckoo land, frankly. And I think, again, it's going to come back to the issue of coal. But there, I'm sorry I'm sounding a bit defeatist, but nobody has an idea, really, how to make a carbon capture and sequestration plant work on a scale that's needed.
I really love how everybody's putting on first world approaches to a country that is facing its own challenges. Why not think about ideas to embrace the way that India is now, and that is about communities. There are rural economies, there's agriculture, they can use and do distributed energy projects, anaerobic digestion. It all sounds small, but small all adds up and grows to create an opportunity for a community to really develop and a country to do things differently. We need to empower the people, empower them to be in control of their energy, not dictated to by thinking we have to build lots of nuclear plant.
There's a lot of technology out there that is being deployed, and people aren't aware of the success of it in their area. It hasn't been monetized to the consumer. So the general apathy towards renewable energy, they care about what's in their pocket. There's a lot of new stuff coming. If they knew when that was actually going to start affecting them in their pocket, and when the inflection point was, people's appetite for renewable energy would perhaps turn around.
This is a question of priorities. How serious do we think climate change is? The dismissal of thorium energy, in my opinion, is ludicrous.
I think what I'd like to say is that the problem that I have with the debate about renewables is that there's an underlying assumption that that means carbon-free. Decarburization, I think, is an oversimplification of the challenge that we're facing. There is nothing wrong with carbon. Carbon is nature's energy source. It's the most concentrated source of energy. You can't fly aeroplanes on anything other than jet fuel. The answer is not to eliminate carbon from our energy mix, but rather to close the loop of the carbon cycle, which has always existed in nature, by finding ways to bring carbon back out of the atmosphere and into the energy mix.
We should be changing the balance between investment in, say, offshore wind at the present time into research, so we get the batteries, we get the thorium plants on stream quicker. This country's and Europe's carbon footprint has increased as emissions have gone down. So, well, some politicians say we're doing great. We're not, because we're importing Chinese goods made less efficiently, and we're paying a carbon price for bringing those goods over here.
So what was the most effective solution to achieve a clean energy future? The voting began in earnest, with the winner, by just one vote, revealed to be the idea presented at the London event. That being an energy WikiLeaks that leads to business-led solutions through the Internet of Things. Fortunately, there are many businesses already developing such connected technologies, and we hope this means that we can continue down the road to a clean energy future. From me, Jeff Cutmore, and Energy Opportunities, goodbye.